Hello, so this is the result. It's not exactly black or as black as I thought it was going to be. It is dark, but I'm not sure like it is darker than my regular hair. But yeah, it's going to fade in a little while, and I don't know, I don't regret it. But back to this video and what I wanted to talk about. So as you see by the title, all lust is grief. It's something that I ended up coming across. I've been kind of like exploring lately. Stuff related to the Enneagram, and in one of the videos that I was watching, this is something that like the guy said, and that got me thinking. It really, it took roots in my head, basically because I don't know. I think when you start thinking about it, and there's like so much of like that notion that makes me realize like, oh, I do struggle with lust. Basically all my fantasies, like they are desire, and lust starts as desire, but then it becomes a one thing, and then after that it can become vulnerability. It can become a disappointment, some type of frustration, and that's basically a story of my life. It's kind of like me fantasizing about something and then realizing that that thing is unattainable, and kind of like having to deal with that grief of losing something. It's always like this kind of like interesting feeling because you haven't really gotten any of that. It's all in your head, but it really does feel like you're losing something, that there's something there that is being lost. And as I said, it also has to do with the fact that like the moment that you start wanting, you realize that whatever is going on with you right now, like that is going to come to a halt. Like that is not going to yeah, like that moment you're living is going to come to an end. And then you also know that that new moment that you might start living, like that also will lead to an end. So it just gets in the way of like you fully enjoying some things. You kind of like get really lost in your head, and sometimes it feels like there's nothing you can do. And I mean, I don't believe like that is entirely true, but it is something that it kind of like really you know permeates in my head. It makes me think, as I said, it makes me realize that lust is a bigger sin than I had realized. Because I think I'm talking once again about my back tattoo, my back piece, and it is the seven deadly sins or vices. For me, they're vices, but this conversation can also happen in the realm of sinning, but that's not really my approach. But what I'm trying to say is that I'm basically like I think that my vision of what lust is when when I got tattoo was different. I think I was thinking more of like sexual, lust, like the aspect of it, which it is a big one. In humans, we're always kind of like struggling, but like there's so much more, and I think that those other elements right now they're even more pressing than like the sexual aspect of it. Although I do understand that this was like 2 years ago where I was still struggling with things and figuring out my like what I wanted and what I didn't want, because I had a lot of traumas regarding my sexuality. And sometimes like you end up being kind of like the things you want, not what you really want. It's just what your trauma is kind of like telling you that you want. Like that is pretty much your need at a point in time. So basically it took me a little while to get to a point where I'm like, okay, like I don't necessarily want this. It's just that I'm kind of like traumatized. So this aspect of this, situation, this thing, it's kind of like the only way that I can express myself in this area, this facet of my life. So when you start to actually deconstruct, like all this, hold on. Yeah, so when you start kind of like working on on the traumas, you start to kind of like find that you don't necessarily want that. Like you don't want to be limited by events that happened in the past that you can change, you can control. So with that, I think I had like a much healthier sexuality than I've had at other points in time. What's basically what I'm trying to say is that that aspect, it was definitely something, but right now that I have reached this healthy point, I think the other, things they're like more pressing than this, like the other aspects of lust. And as I said, it is interesting talking about grief, because I feel like a lot of times in my life I haven't really felt like I could properly you know, not that I could properly talk about certain things that I was grieving because they were not real in a certain way. You know, in the more direct, concrete aspect, they were not real, but they were fantasies that I had in my head. So I really experienced a sense of loss. And you know, recently, you know, like I lost a friend back in May, and once you experience like grief, you can kind of like compare and see like the logic behind it is the same, and the feeling is also the same of like losing something. You're losing somebody, you're losing something. I don't know, maybe it is because I'm bipolar, maybe like that has something to do with this, but I really get in my fantasies, they really get in my head to the point that like my body responds to a lot of like the elements there, you know, a lot of like the things that I, you know, like a lot of like the things happening. You know, sometimes like the things happening in my head, they affect me more than the stuff that is happening IRL. So I don't really know what exactly, I don't know what to make of that. Also, I don't really know how to handle it. I mean, I do know how to handle it. If you take a page from like the whole thing of processing, you know, grief, processing loss, like you kind of like go through those stages all the same, even if it isn't something that is really out there that exists outside of my head. So yeah, but anyway, so like this was a moment that I really was like that made me kind of like be kind of like, okay, so if you're talking about Enneagram type 8, and there I think I mentioned this before, I was between 5'4" and you know 8'7" for a while. Like they're both speaking to me, but like right now I'm getting older. I think I'm getting to know myself better, and also I think my responses to things, they're way less traumatized. It's just like kind of like a genuine response to, you know, things that are happening. But yeah, but basically the point I'm trying to make is that I've been leaning more towards like 8'7", and when I was kind of like, you know, I heard this whole thing of like, oh, loss is grief, I really was like, oh my god, it is, I am a type 8. This is the one. Because, you know, I've been also consuming content from, you know, type 5. And I still, because that's the thing, like you relate to all of them a little bit, and you know, as I said, like I did a test, and the test indicated both, so there's still like a lot in type 5 that I relate to, and but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because, you know, like if I'm a little bit like that, I can, you know, search, and I can do some research and find better strategies for me to cope with like those different aspects of my life. But yeah, so also my curls, they're looking really pretty. I believe that's the good thing about henna. It doesn't damage your hair, much to the contrary, it helps, you know, hydrate it. I don't know if that's the right verb to use, but anyways, all lust is grief. And I think even like sexually, you could make this connection, because you kind of like you create these situations in your head, and reality like very rarely, you know, meets your expectations, at least in my experience. I don't know, it sounds kind of negative, but I think it's because you know, I think sometimes I have some very specific needs and things I want to do, and I don't necessarily find, you know, like the person for me to kind of like do those things with, you know, to have like those interactions. So, you know, even if something is decent and you could even argue good, it still leaves me, you know, like wanting, because it's not entirely everything I kind of like wanted. Also, I'm not really looking for anything right now, to be completely honest. I'm kind of like just doing my thing, being on my own. Like that's been working out great for me, and I have so many things that I want to do, and like I don't need distractions, because one thing is for you to if you're craving something in any capacity, it's kind of hard for you to, you know, do without that. You have to kind of like get satisfied to some extent. You know, maybe as I said, it's not going to be the thing that you want, but it's going to be close enough, or maybe like not close enough, but it's going to be as close as, you know, it gets in your circumstance. And I know I don't want to use my time to pursue some of those things. I just want to, you know, kind of like be in the moment. And I think that yeah, so like I'm pretty sure, pretty much what I'm trying to say is that my life is very peaceful right now, and I'm very happy that it is. Also very happy with how things are happening. You know, like that is kind of like the gist of it. But back to grief, you know, it's interesting because right now I'm like in a really good place mentally, where I'm not fantasizing too much. I'm kind of like more, you know, connected with the things that are happening in real life. And but you know, like a little while ago, I could have made this kind of, I don't know, like this would have like hit, you know, hard, because it would have been like pretty much like what I was experiencing. But as I said, like the moment I heard that sentence, I was like, oh my god, that's it. You know, like this is, you know, because I don't think there's anything that I feel that other people don't. I feel like everything that I've ever experienced is something that you can find in the lives of like everybody else. Like it naturally, like maybe the circumstances they change, the context change, but like the feelings, like the struggles, like the victories, all the success and or failures, like they're very universal. Like that is kind of like where we are all at. And so yeah, so I feel like for my fantasies, maybe like the general idea, like something that other people could have fantasized about, but like the specifics they might be my own, because there are some specifications for what I want, exactly how I want them. But the point I'm trying to make is that I think that this is a very, so I'm not saying that once I heard that like that sentence, that I was like, oh my god, this speaks to me alone. Like, no, I think this speaks to a lot of people, and I am and I'm one of them. Like it doesn't, like, advice doesn't have to be unique to you. It doesn't have to be I mean, if it comes from a person who knows your entire story, your history, like it can be more beneficial, it can be more helpful. But I do think that there is some beauty in the general advice that you can get from people who kind of like don't know you. Like there's some pearls that there. Naturally there's also some stuff that is not going to apply, but that's kind of like just how life happens. That's just how we all exist. Like we try to help people. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody's trying to help, but I think that I'm fortunate enough that I have been able to kind of like interact with people who want like to kind of like help, even if they have the wrong idea, they have the wrong morals, they don't have like the right moral compass or whatever. There's still like something to be said about like the effort to kind of like to change things. So that's kind of like where I am at. But yeah, but in general, like this is grief that I was talking about. Like this is something that at so many different points in time in my life, it has been so heavy. It has been this weight dragging me down. I've mourned so many lives that I've never lived. I've mourned so many ideas, so many, all these fantasies that I've had. Like I've had to mourn them, and it sucks every time. It is something. I wish I could say that like I'm doing better, but like last year I had this departure, you could say, from this kind of like fantasy that I had, and man, it was brutal. I literally lost the will to live. Once I kind of like realized that this is not my life, this is not like my story. And also like I can change the past. So I can change. I mean, you could argue that you can change the future, but I don't know what it is. So it's not like I can mold it exactly. I kind of like I work within the confines of of my vision, my experience, and the thing is that I have way more experience right now than I had a decade ago, but I don't have anywhere near as much experience I'll have like a decade from now. So when it comes to me and things I'm doing to mold my life, like this rest, to kind of like conduct the future, I have no guarantees that like things are going to happen. It is pretty much it's an open game. I don't know, is that an expression? I'm not sure, but it is very open-ended, and I can do my best, but I don't know what is going to be right, what I have to really reach out to, and that's okay. That's not really that's not the problem for me to handle today. This is not the lion we're killing today. But yeah, but grief, I don't know, I feel like I felt so validated. Basically I was like, okay, I'm not crazy, basically, because there's a tendency of like me sometimes thinking that I'm crazy, because I'm bipolar, and like crazy is a word that has been used historically to refer to people who have bipolar disorder, or other mental illnesses, other situations. But what I'm trying to say is that sometimes I'm like, is this a me thing? Not, once again, not me as in like me individually, me as in whatever group of people I'm a part of. We can talk about mental illness, we can talk about neurodivergence, we can talk about trauma, we can talk about, I don't know, gender, sexuality, religion, politics, like all these different groups that we're part of, and so sometimes I'm like, am I alone in this? And I don't interact much, so that's on me, because maybe if I did go out there interacting much, I would be like, I would realize I am not alone. As of right now, I kind of am, But and that's okay. That's okay, because I still have the support of my family, of my loved ones, my friends. I'm kind of like surrounded by a good crew, so things are okay. But it was really good listening to that, like our blessed is grief, because as I said, I felt seen, I feel very validated, and it's also kind of like helpful, for the future. Like, oh, I'm kind of like at this point right now, but I don't have to be like, knowing that this is something I'm prone to. I can do something about it. I can, maybe work on it so we get to that extreme. I mean, usually the answer to kind of like handle fantasies is very much like ground yourself in the present. So you have to find things that you enjoy doing, things that kind of like aggregate the edge to your life, and that is usually kind of like the key. Naturally, this is much easier said than done, and also sometimes your head doesn't help, because sometimes, like for example, I love writing. It is one of my go-to things in general, but there are days where I can't write. I can't get the words out, and I have to respect myself. I have to respect my time, and I do, but like that is kind of like a way out. Like, because also, like, maybe I don't know, because I'm writing my novel right now. This is my third one, but maybe I could write something else, something a little bit more indulgent. Like that is kind of like a good way of like doing things. But yeah, I'm gonna have wraps up right now, so I'll let this grief. I'll probably record another video later, because there's more to talk about, and like the little tensions that I go into, like they're fine. Like I don't have to try and reduce myself, because the point of this is to get things out.